everyone, I'm Anna Snow, and thank you for joining me today on BlazeRadioOnline.com. Today, I'm here with musical artist William Hinson. Hi, William. How are you today?
Hey girl, how's it going?
I'm good. So, you just recently released an album called Everything Will Be Okay.
I did.
I
Yeah.
love it.
Thank
Uh,
you.
can you talk about that and maybe some of your influences for the record?
Sure, yeah. I certainly, uh, it was definitely a shot in the dark to name a record, Everything Will Be Okay, especially given the circumstances, but turned out okay, I think. Um, but yeah, it's been a 2 year project. I was not planning for it to be 2 years. Uh, Ongoing, but I started it after I graduated from college, and I moved back home, and I wasn't really playing a lot of shows, and so I was basically just in my little makeshift recording studio that I had in my grandmother's basement, uh, and it was just waking up every day and going. Um, my mom takes care of my grandmother and my nephew at the same time. She's like a superhero. So it was basically the four of us up there every day, and I was in the basement just working on something, writing a song every day, trying to. Um, and so it's really like I think the record really encapsulates not only that part of my life, which was this very in between, bizarro, like uh, I am supposed to be a legitimate adult now, but I feel like I'm 16 and they just let me do things, which I effectively still feel like that. And apparently you don't get over that at any point, I don't think. Um, but yeah, and then last year, so that was 2018, and then last year in 2019, I had the opportunity to go on tour around the country, um, and so I sort of accidentally postponed the release of everything. But with this year, I was supposed to have been on tour the whole time, and so I guess we ended up getting the album sooner than we probably would have if I had been able to play shows. um, but yeah, so that's a little bit about the record. We put out a bunch of singles, a bunch of the tunes as singles, uh, which we can talk about that sort of process later, I suppose. But in terms of the influences, like I think I'm I've said this before, probably many times, probably too many times, but I'm a I'm a big believer in like I don't want to listen through a record and get bored, you know, like you get to the third song and you're like, okay, I get it, you know. Um, I'm gonna move on. I'm gonna go listen to another person because this is the same thing. And so, it's really just uh, it's a very bizarre record. But all the songs are very short, so you don't get caught up in a genre that you don't like being in for too awfully long. I don't think. But as far as influences, like I'm obviously a big Beatles fan. Uh, this is my Paul McCartney rubber ducky.
Love it.
It says Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hot Tub Band on it. Um, Love that. I got this in Amsterdam. Um, and there's a lot of like Beatley stuff, I think, on the record.
Robert Fields-esque.
Very, yeah. The Mellotron flutes. The Beatles had an instrument in Abbey Road called the Mellotron, and basically it was a precursor to what we know now as like a sampler, And so basically there were these tape loops on each key, and so it would activate these tape loops of whatever sound. So those flutes on Strawberry Fields, um, they are they're actually tape loops being played as he presses the keys, and so it's a very recognizable sound. but I found a sample I had of like mellotron flutes, and yeah, just worked out. And then that became like this essential part of the record. I don't know, it's very bizarro sort of happenstance, but yeah. And then obviously I'm a big 1975 fan, and and John Mayer and Hall and Oates. 1, 2, 3 is pretty Hall and Oatesy, I think.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah.
I was gonna say, so obviously this year's been kind of crazy. So what's it been like choosing to like make music and like release a record in 2020?
Well, I mean, I think they're they're obviously on March 13th. I played the last show, and sort of serendipitously, the universe is very strange, because like serendipitously, it was my first headline sellout with the full band. Was the last gig ever.
Wow.
Um, and so that was very bizarre because that same day I had gotten in one email I lost like 21 gigs. um, I'm laughing. I'm also crying, but I'm also laughing. I'm mostly laughing, um, because yeah. But so it was very weird. I was playing like 5 to 6 nights a week, whether that was a feature gig or a full band gig or just playing as a potted plant in the corner of a restaurant or a brewery or something like that. Um, but I mean, I there was definitely that period after, uh, we had to basically just assume that all gigs were kaput for a while. Um, and so there was that period where I was just like, what am I going to do? But then after that, it's like, well, I think for all musicians, you just sort of realize like, okay, I either spend this time like learning how to sew or like, you know, work, working a factory job or like preparing for our dystopian future. Or I can just work and release music, and work to grow it online. And that's the big thing that, Blaine, who is my manager and my best friend, and he lives across the parking lot, right there. Um, so when this first hit, we both were sort of. He was very instrumental, no pun intended, in being like, all right, we gotta go online now. We gotta uh, repurpose our efforts. So it's been very strange, but it's also, you know it happens. Um, I say that like there's a once in a lifetime global pandemic, all the time.
It happens.
It happens. It is. I mean, this obviously goes without saying, but if I have a gig in like, I don't know, New York City or something, right? And there's like an earthquake or some sort of natural disaster that hits New York City. Well, in that situation, obviously, my thoughts and prayers go out to New York City, obviously. But I can literally go anywhere else in the world and play a gig. Quite literally anywhere. um, Maybe not North Korea or Cuba right now. But I could go anywhere else, and this is like the one thing, that you know stops everyone from playing at all. Um, which when you're playing so often, it's quite bizarre to go from anywhere to nowhere overnight.
So I wanted to ask, what like inspires you? Well, what or who inspires you to like write music the most?
I think it's just like events, in my life, or um, I get really inspired by the music. Like I think most often I'll just write some sort of progression, or have a loop on my loop pedal going, or some groove on the computer, uh, and then you know I'll have these musical ideas sort of stored away for a rainy day whenever, you know, someone wrongs me or something, or I get really, um, you know, swept away in lust or something like that. Um, yeah, I mean, uh, it just depends. I think one thing about the Lennon McCartney uh, sort of songwriting partnership that is so famous and I guess infamous in a way is that John goes to film How I Won the War in like late '66. He comes back. Their first session for Sergeant Pepper was in December of '66. I'm pretty sure, and he comes back and they all get together in the studio too, in at Abbey Road, and George Martin, their producer, says, "Okay, who has a tune? What do we want to start with?" And John's like, "Oh, well, I wrote this." And then he writes Strawberry Field. He plays Strawberry Fields, and McCartney's reaction was, whenever he got done, he was the first one to say something. There was like, period of silence. And then Paul was the first one, and he said, "Well, that was just bloody brilliant." um, but as a result of that, he, you know, this song was about a place in Liverpool, called Strawberry Fields. It was a children's home. And so, John writes a song about his childhood in Liverpool. So what does Paul do? He goes and literally, like, the next day, writes Penny Lane about Liverpool, and then it becomes, I don't think the first double A-sided single, potentially, I don't know, but it was a double A-side single. They were both, Strawberry Fields and Penny Lane, and that sort of built-in competition between the two of them. Like, I think I get that from a second-hand perspective of, like, I'll listen to, new music by someone I like, or even someone I don't like particularly, and I'll be like, wow, that is gas. That's better than some songs I've been writing recently. I need to do better now. And then, so it just depends.
So before Everything Will Be Okay, you had a series of EPs called Elevator Music Volumes 1, 2, and 3. So like, how do you think you've like grown or like changed as an artist from like that era to like the current one?
I think definitely, like, productionally, there's one thing I really like about the Elevator Music EPs is that, you know, like Elevator Music Volume 1, I had just finished. I studied record production in college, audio engineering, and so I just finished my first semester of recording classes, uh, you know, and I put it out in March. It came out on March 3rd of 2017, that first one. And then, like, 2 weeks later, in my second level of recording classes, I learned a bunch of stuff about mixing that could have definitely helped me on the EP I just released. And so you go from, like, volume 1 to volume 2, and there's definitely, like, an evolution of just the sound, and then again 6 months later with volume 3. I think it's changed. I think it's gotten a little bit more personal. Like, I'm willing to, as I've gotten a little bit older, I think I've been able to, you know, maybe write a little more openly, or name drop people in my life, or whatever, and be real about the situations. Like, but still, I think that the thing that has remained the same is this sort of positive tilt. I can't, like, Help is a really, like, when I wrote it, like, it was from a very scathing place. It's like very upset, but you would never know that listening to the tune. you know um, I feel like I'm incapable of writing something like mean or something. I don't know, not mean, but you know what I mean. Um, yeah,
So your fans are called Girlies, which I think is so cute. Do
really.
you have any like favorite fan interactions?
Yeah, well, it's just been bizarro recently, honestly. Just people are so nice, and they've been so nice about the record. Um, I this probably isn't like a sparkling moment of fan engagement, but I had a message request like a month ago, maybe a little bit longer than that, and I never responded. I haven't responded to it yet. But I had a message request from someone. I have a song called George Harrison, and it's about how I love all of the little things about my girlfriend, the things that like she, would have no idea that I loved about her, the dumb things basically. Uh, and one of those things is her favorite Beatle is George, or it was whenever we started dating. But then like as you know, we've been together for 5 years, and now her favorite is Paul. Like it's both accepted that Paul is the best. You know what I mean? Objectively, but her favorite is still George. And so, but anyway, so that's what the tune is about. And but we've run, you know, Instagram ads and stuff for that song, and someone sent me a DM that was like, "You listen here, and you listen good. You'll never be like George. George was smart and cute and funny." And not saying that you're not smart, cute, and funny, but just remember you will never be like him. And I was like, wow, oh, yes, you're right. I don't know, like, what do you say to that? It was just fantastic. That's definitely been a highlight. Um, but yeah, I played a gig in Charleston in February, um, and I had this 11-year-old girl come up to me, and she wanted to buy a T-shirt, and or maybe she was 9. I don't know. She was just a young spry chap. Um, but but yeah, she wanted to buy a T-shirt, and she said that I was her second favorite artist in the world. And I said, "Oh, thank you. Who was the first?" And she said, "Well, Billie Eilish, of course." And I said, "Of course, yeah, of course." So, yeah, I don't know. It's just bizarre to me that people even uh, listen. So it's it's fun.
I think it's funny you mentioned the Instagram ads for George Harrison. That's actually how I found your music, and George Harrison is my favorite Beatle. So I saw that was the name, and I was like very intrigued. So I like, went and listened to more, and I was like, oh, okay.
I get it. I get it. Now I definitely don't like the music because he said Paul is the best. Yeah,
No, I do love Paul, though. I think Paul is the cutest Beatle.
he
I
is.
just love George.
I think we can all agree he is.
So we've talked a lot about your music, but I'm just curious, what are some of your other like passions and hobbies?
I really like uh, I really like Jeopardy. Um, I Yeah, I mean, like it's weird whenever you decide that um, that music is going to be your job when it's been, yeah, I haven't wanted to do anything else since the second grade. Like I knew I wanted to do specifically this, um, and so it's kind of bizarre to, uh, you know, when people ask, oh well, what are your hobbies? It's like, well, basically this. But no, as a result, I think like because the music industry has shifted so much in terms of, people can be really good and never have a record label deal. uh you know People can be really bad and have a record label deal. It's like roulette. But they can grow themselves online and stuff like that, And so part of the I guess requirement now for anyone that wants to be a musician is to be multifaceted. And so uh, I think like I know how to do Adobe Premiere really well now, uh, because I've sort of had to. Um, Same thing with Photoshop. Like I wouldn't say I'm great in Photoshop, but I do all of my graphics and stuff. Any sort of creation, uh, I would say I'm a hobbyist of creation. That and watching YouTube videos about guitars, you know, and Guinness. I love Guinness.
How are your new guitars?
Ooh, just so wonderful, just so wonderful. Um, Yeah, I feel like I might have too many now. Well, I need to come to Arizona, I gotta go see the Fender headquarters, Fender factory.
Like 20 minutes away from where I am.
Well, I'm booking my flight,
All
so
right,
yeah. But roll out the sleeping bag for me, please.
I will.
Thanks.
So last thing before we go, where can people find you and your music, like online and stuff?
Yeah, basically, if you go to the Google machine and you type in William Henson, it's Hinson, not Hen like the Muppets guy. You can find me, basically, in general. WilliamHinson.com or William Hinson on Instagram or Facebook or LimeWire, FrostWire, the whole deal. Spotify. Yeah, basically anyway.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for being here
Yeah,
with this.
thanks for having me. Thanks for having me.
You are like my favorite current artist, so this is really fun.
Well, thank you. Thank you for listening.
I love it when you say things so I can sit and watch you talk. I love it when you say George Harrison is better in comparison to all three minus Paul.